I'd like to invite you to begin this morning by inviting you to consider this two-part reflective question. So I don't need an answer, but something for you to reflect on. The first part of this question is, have a think of when was the last time that you prayed to the Lord that cry of the leper? If you want to, you can cure me. We don't necessarily use those particular words, but it's the sentiment, isn't it? It's that cry which comes from the very depths of our heart. If you want to, you can cure me. And the second part of this reflective question is linked to it. When we make that cry to the Lord, when we desire and long for that experience of healing in one way or another, what does that healing look like to you? What is your expectation? What are you looking for from the Lord to experience that healing? Because I think the answer to this question could be quite interesting. And the answer could influence, or perhaps impede even, our journey of healing. For some, healing could be the desire to create a bypass around a particular event or around a particular trauma or hurt. I know in the past this is the category that I have fallen into. I remember saying to somebody that I just wanted to bypass X and be able to move on. I'm sure you've experienced something of that in your life. But I soon realized, though, that in attempting to create a bypass around a particular trauma or event, hurt, what we end up doing instead of creating a bypass is we end up creating a roundabout, because though that issue will keep coming back in on itself, we keep going round in circles, time and time again. For others, the possibility of healing is so far out of their reach that it's not even a thing. That there's this huge chasm that's been created. That healing is this promised land over there that we just cannot get to. And the consequences of this become that the event or the trauma will always remain part of our present moment. It becomes so much part of who we are that we cannot imagine for a second a world without it. It becomes like a crutch or like a scaffolding that gets fused around us. For others again, the experience of healing would be nothing less than returning to how things were, to that moment in time, back in time, to how things used to be, and nothing less. And we can imagine this scenario has its own challenges with it, because none of us can go back in time. No one can rewrite the past. And this inability to go back and to return everything to how it was means that a wound can never be healed. And if a wound is left, it becomes infected. However healing may look to you, however you've been reflecting upon this yourself, the important thing is that we continue to make the cry of the leper our own cry. If you want to, you can cure me. If you have ever begun a journey of healing, you will recognize that the experience of healing itself is about establishing a wholeness, about creating or recreating a wholeness. Archbishop George is quite helpful here. Archbishop George, you would describe this as putting the broken pieces of our lives back together. Putting those broken pieces of our lives back together. And as we put these broken pieces back together, what's created is a new whole. Something new. In this journey to piece back together the broken parts of our lives, our weaknesses, perhaps our hurts, the traumas, while we begin to piece these back together, we recognize that this is something familiar. The shape and the shadows of how things were, perhaps. But there's a big difference. As we put these things back together, we recognize that now these come with cracks. That cracks have appeared as a result of these broken pieces. Think about a pot that has been pushed from a countertop and smashed, and as we try to put these things back together. These are the wounds of our hurt. This is the pain of our brokenness. And while these broken pieces do indeed come back together again, while a whole is again re-established once more, the past leaves its mark. Scarring occurs. I don't know if you're aware, but there's a particular Japanese art form of repairing broken pottery. And they repair this broken pottery. I don't know if you've ever seen it. It's worth a Google when you go home later on. And by using this special lacquer. And this lacquer is mixed with powdered gold, silver, or platinum. And the particular Japanese art form is called kintsugi, literally meaning golden repair. And the breakages are pieced back together, but the repairing itself, the breakages, become part of the history of the object, helps to tell the story. And so the cracks are something that's accentuated through the gold, silver lacquer that's used. And so if you Google it later on, you'll see the most beautiful examples of that. Because they say that these cracks are the things to be celebrated, not the things to be ashamed of. As we make our own cries of healing and restoration to Jesus, I think we can learn a lot from this Japanese art form. Jesus longs to stretch out his hand to us. He longs to say to us with a deep sigh that comes from the very depths of his being, "Of course I want to. Be cured." No one is ever too broken to experience that moment of Jesus stretching out his hand to us. If we think that we're too far gone, that we're beyond any form of help or healing, this is just the work of the enemy, who longs for us to remain enslaved and entrapped in our pasts. The scars of our past help us to tell our story. And that story is something beautiful and something unique and personal to us. They have helped us and molded us to the people who we are. And as we know from the creation story, don't we? Everything God creates was beautiful, and indeed it was good. The past does not define our now. I think that this is such a beautiful gospel and a beautiful way for us to end this part of our ordinary time journey, as it gives us a wonderful springboard of prayer, of reflection, of discernment, as we begin to move forward into Lent and to begin to discover what Lent has in store for us. Lent will offer us the space to do battle with some of these things, even if it's just one wound. To begin that walk with Jesus towards a place of healing, towards that place of wholeness. This is the path which Jesus walks with us, with his hand outstretched. We are not alone. Amen.